Good morning, good day, good evening, wherever you are. I hope you're having a wonderful time. You can call me Dragon, and today, well, it's a bit of a special day. It is the release day for my game MonsterStone Prelude. It has been a long time coming, but it is finally released into early access today. So, yeah, if you're curious about what it is and such, you can look it up on Steam. You can find it there, and it's gonna be on sale for 20% off for this initial release window here. So any early adopters, you could basically get 20% off. And I've made a little post about what's to come and so forth, but instead of going into that, I was thinking, well, we might as well just play the game a bit today, and that's pretty much all that I have planned. Hey Argron, welcome to, good morning. How are you doing? This is such a nerve-wracking day for me. I've been sort of like I've been looking forward to it and not been looking forward to it at the same time because I'm so nervous about the success of this. But yeah, wanting to share some gameplay of my my game that I've made. Hope you like it. Anyways, let's get into the right overlay and just dive right in. And I will be playing the experimental branch, which is available to anyone who buys into the game as well. And first, let's go ahead and change some sound settings. Change that down to like some 20%. Change that like some 20%. Yeah, that sounds fine. Something along the lines of that. Can't remember if I reset everything. No, I didn't just say reset everything. Cool, okay, that means everything else should be fine. Yeah, let's dive right in. So, it's been a while since I've shown the current state of the game. And I've been working, well, I guess you could say working hard to try and improve upon what was already there. But first things is that there's no mention of the auto harvesters in this welcome message anymore, and that's because you actually have to unlock them now. Otherwise, quest progression wise, it's pretty much the same. Starting out with introductory to our character Eirik here, or Eric, depending on how you want to pronounce it. I'm not quite sure on how I want to go forward with that, but the general idea is that Eric here just like is starting out on his own in this newfound spot here, and he sort of gets pushed into this overarching story that then the intention is that would escalate into something bigger. But I'm not entirely sure on whether or not
the spirits are talking to me. Oh yes, they're coming in clearly.
Thanks for interrupting me.
Now they're forming into a gaseous material. I can actually see them now.
It can only be one person.
Spirits are very powerful today.
Hey Ammo, how you doing? Silly goose. Hola. Welcome to. But yeah. Not sure if I want to continue with the main story. You had to, of course you had to. You always have to. Yeah, it's like, I like the idea of having like an overarching narrative to be like the main driving force to progress, sort of, so to speak. Like, it opens up the possibility of adding larger goals that go beyond what you sort of want to put into an individual level. But yeah, That's up for debate whether or not that's going to be in like a future implementation to its full. And I've gotten so used to just clicking through all the dialogue, so sorry about that if I end up doing that. When's the Rev of the Amopeka DLC dropping? Well, maybe one day when most of the basics are in place. I mean, most of the basics are in place, don't get me wrong, and this is actually where... Oh, okay. I need to fix that. Lul. The default UI was showing like the template stuff. But yeah, I mean, this is what I've been working on for the last couple of weeks. The upgrade menu mainly. We now have upgrades for all the auto harvesters to be unlocked and to increase the size of them, and as well as the speed and the harvesting rate for at least the tier 1 resources. I technically have implemented for the higher tier resources too, but since all the resources currently present are all tier 1, it doesn't really matter. So the idea is that, you know, there would be a tier 2 to 5 category scrolling further down, but yeah, that's not currently the goal. Also, I've implemented upgrades for processing buildings as well as the generating buildings. So say like a mine that passively generates copper ore for you, or the smithy where you can turn that copper ore into ingots and coins. But we'll look at those later, because right now it's pretty much the same that it's always been. You want to go around collecting all those starting resources. But yeah, how are you doing, Kevin? Hope you're doing well. To complete this next quest, we have to get our wood tier 1 wood harvesting amount and mineral amount up to level 5. That's what we're aiming towards. The menu still, like the upgrade menu still needs some work, because like one of the things is that it always resets to the top whenever you enter it, and you can only scroll with the mouse wheel whenever you're not hovering over a button, so that makes it kind of weird. Yeah, it is actually crazy, right? I'm still like just... It's taken a long while to get to this point, like... But just the fact that I've made it so far is... Yeah, it's mind-boggling. I'm also a bit anxious because of that, because I know that the... not just the expectation of other people are, you know, gonna be pressing on me, but also from myself, like having that responsibility. Cool. Good to hear that you're hyped for the game. Might want to check out the development branch. I did make a post as well, like the game is now into early, available in early access kind of post, where I also like mentioned that there's a experimental branch. And that's where this current version is, because like 2 weeks ago when I had to set up the Steam page and all that, I had to submit like a stable build for the game, and I spent like so long getting that fleshed out to the point where it wasn't like breaking here or there, that I was a little bit afraid of just like making more content or more features after that was locked in, and then just releasing the new version or whatever as the main build. But yeah. Ah, cool. Wish list system, yeah. Would have been better if I had had more time for people to actually get to know about the game beforehand, but with the end of October just moving so closer so fast, I just felt like I didn't have any other choice at this point, sadly. So what can you do? I'm sure it's gonna be fine though. Hey, we got all our tools to, or 2 tools to level 5. Yeah, and Eric here is getting stalked by this mysterious character here. I don't know about the dialogue either. Like, I wrote all of this, of course, but it could need some more work. It's not really like as polished as I want it to be. The main reason why I haven't worked more on the storyline is because, well, one, it's content, and though it means that there would be more stuff to do, it doesn't really improve the quality of the gameplay, if you know what I mean. And besides, I've been wanting to overhaul the dialogue, the way the dialogue is implemented, because right now, if I need to go in and make changes to it, it's like not really set up to allow that. But I mean, this is also a tutorial level anyway, so the dialogue sort of tries to move that forward. And this quest is about getting your streak counter up, which is this thing up here. So every time you take out an enemy, it adds to your streak counter. Say you take out a sheep, then it adds that up there too. With the idea being that some levels, like, you know, require you to take out X amount of enemies. I'm not too sure about the, like, defeat enemies sort of quest goal, if I'm being perfectly honest, because currently there's like the debate I'm having with myself where all the resources in the levels themselves are like finite, right? When they run out, they are removed and all that. Yeah, there's always stuff to that can be improved, and there's definitely a lot of things that I want to do. I mean, just for one, there's that whole items system that I almost have implemented. I just need to get the stats implemented in a sensible way so that I can expand upon it. That's also why I went in and did the upgrade system extensions, because that needed a lot of code refactoring in order to facilitate it. Please don't eat me. Have you never seen a fairy before? But yeah, the current way that the dialogue system works in Unity for me is literally like just a list that contains entries for every single step of the dialogue. And then it contains like a reference to the image, the name field, and then the actual text that goes into the text box, of course, but then also whether or not it goes onto the top or bottom of the screen. And I can't remember what else there is. The main issue is that I can't reorder the list or insert items into the middle of it. That means that if I have like a dialogue section that has like, say, 30 entries, and I want to add some dialogue in the middle of it or remove some of it, then I can't really do that without redoing the whole thing. So yeah. Thanks, Emma, that means a lot. I do my best, I do my best. But yeah. Dialogue system right now works in like a basic capacity. But yeah, just making content for it is a pain in the ass. The completing quests will reward you with one of a few things. Like either you get these loot boxes essentially. I mean, they're just chests that contain resources. And they have different rarities that then define like the contents, like how much there is inside and such. But some quests will yield you other rewards. Open world when? What, this game? Or just like another game? Not exactly sure what you mean by open world. Like just like being able to move in this from this perspective infinitely in one direction. I don't know. That would be another game project, I think. But anyways, so at this stage, you know, completed the tutorial essentially, and you can move on with these exclamation point quests marking the end of the level, if you will. And when you move on, you can decide to put it into a save slot, of which you have up to 5 for your profile. Just put it in 5, doesn't matter which one it is at the moment. Future world generation and stuff. Oh, okay. That's a bit of a different topic then. I've been wanting to do like... See, the thing is, the game doesn't really do well with procedural generation at the moment. In the way that it's designed, that is. Because for procedural generation to work, you know, you need to make everything modular. But at the moment, everything is like limited to be within the same playing field, this box area. So if I wanted to make it modular, it would have to somehow fit into this box at the moment, for one. And if not, then I would have to extend it so that it can do other things. I know. But still, I mean, it's fun to think about because it's not impossible to make this procedural. But that would just require so much more work. And right now, I'm more leaning towards just sticking to this, right? Handcrafted levels that have a sense of randomness to them, but not too much, rather. It does have that added issue of, you know, levels becoming repetitive, but based off of my experiences so far, it takes me about a day to make a level prototype, and then at the very most another day to polish it off once all the assets and everything included are in place. So say it's just a matter of making the actual level geometry and putting down the resources and setting up the quests. That takes about 1 to 2 days. So if you put that in perspective, it's not gonna take like an awful lot of time to make a lot of content for the game. It's just more a matter of balancing is the major hurdle, I suppose. But yeah, this is like the second level that you always get forced into. It's not really like a tutorial level per se, because you do have the option of just not going along with it, if you know what I mean. So this level introduces basically all the mechanics that the game currently has, like the rest of them. So one is that you can just abandon an area, which reduces this multiplier up here. And then it'll pull out a level from like a catalog of tier 1 levels and just choose one at random that it then moves you to. Alternatively, you can also beat the level with this exclamation point quest again. But this time you need like resources of different kinds in order to do so. One of them being copper ingots. And that is a process resource, so 2 things that we want to do here. We can build a copper mine, which just generates copper over time. And by default, this is also affected by the multiplier. And I'll go into detail a bit more on how that actually works later, but for now, just know that this generates copper every 20 seconds. So we want to build a smithy over here because that's needed in order to make those copper ingots. But to do so, we need some of the resources that are present in this level specifically. And we need some citron. A little bit more. There we go. And then that gives us access to the smithy here where we can make copper ore into copper ingots. So if we just queue up some. And yes, Kevin, I have fixed the bug. If you remove things from the queue, even when it's down to 1, it doesn't give you both the ingots and the ore. Thanks. Just some... I managed to sift through a bunch of like... what do you call it? Creative Commons... No, not Creative Commons. What's it called again? CC0 license stuff, so... It's like there's some good stuff out there here and there, but you do need to look for it. So one thing we can do with this processing facility here is that we can also manually speed it up by just pressing this crafting button. And before, in an older version of the game, like these options in here also scale the multiplier. So the reason you get 2 ingots is because it's a multiplier of 2. If it was a multiplier of 3, it would be 3 ingots for the cost of 6 copper. And the time it takes to craft these and how much progress you make per click is dependent on the multiplier too. So the higher the multiplier, the more time it's gonna take. And you're probably thinking then, well, why bother getting your multiplier up if it scales linearly? Well, that's where the upgrades come into play. Because you can upgrade the manual processing speed so that you can do it faster. And you can also improve the automatic processing speed and also the amount at the moment. This is like a... I'm not sure if this is gonna stay in, but you can do that now. So basically you just get 1 more output per craft so that you know, you can sort of improve the yield as well. That doesn't scale with the modifier though, so for the crafting recipes, getting the modifier up is essentially like, what would you even call it? Like it improves the potentiality, or yeah, the potential for how efficient these crafting processes can be. Because eventually, you know, it would be so fast to do this processing queue here that it would take less than a second. And eventually we go into like really small units like nanoseconds or whatever. So to get around that issue, I decided to put a cap on how low it can go, meaning that no matter how high you upgrade the speed, the time it takes to craft something can never go below a second, basically. Which essentially means at some point, if you've upgraded it a lot, you just can't improve upon it any more than maybe the yield itself, right? Which at that point, it makes sense to get a higher modifier level and then replace the old smithy with a new one that then has a longer default timer that you can then improve upon. That is sort of like the idea, because now that we, like for instance, we have that old level, we can return to that anytime we want, right? And that means that we have access to resources from this level still whilst progressing in the new one. Since, well, upgrading our wood collection rate is still going to require pine wood, but this level doesn't have any. It has these mushroom trees instead. So if you want to improve your ability to harvest wood, you need a level with pine wood. And the idea is that for higher tier resources, you're going to need higher tier materials too. What if you would just upgrade so you create more at once? You can do that. The only problem with that is that it's going to become more and more expensive for every time you upgrade it. So essentially, you're eventually going to require so many resources, but you're not going to create, like, for every time you upgrade it, you know, it's just going to take you longer before you can invest in the next upgrade, even with that upgrade in mind, if you don't also utilize the modifier. Because you also want to upgrade the speed and everything else, preferably, so that your upgrade costs are like balanced out with how fast it goes and how much you get out of it. Is at least sort of the idea that I'm going for. The only issue right now in the experimental build is that it requires fire essence, and there's only one level in the game that actually provides fire essence right now. For the manual crafting, that needs, I think it's wind essence, which we should be able to get on this first level. Oh, and for anyone that doesn't like idle games and having to click on things manually, I do have an auto-clicker implemented in the game. So if you go under gameplay and down to accessibility, you can enable this. It's default disabled by default, but if you enable it, you can set your delay as you want, and you can even decide whether or not it should be a toggle or just whilst you're holding down right click. So one thing though is that the game is sort of intended, like, I'm trying to design the game around not having to require an auto clicker though. So in essence, if you use an auto clicker, you're just cutting down on the, you know, game time you get out of it, I suppose. Like, you just breeze through the game much faster, but I thought I would still leave it in because I'm using it as a development tool anyway. Because when testing it, it does get a bit much having to repeat the early stages of the game over and over. But yeah, this is only a modifier 1 level. So even though I just harvested all that, I only got like 18 wind essence. Which isn't, was it, I think that, is that barely enough for like 1 upgrade, I think? No, I can't even upgrade this once. Okay. Well, let's see, what else do we need? We need 20 lightning essence, and that you get from these citron. And we probably want to improve the mining rate. Oh, did that just bug out? Bit unsure, that looked kind of dodgy. Oh well, maybe I'll just look through my WOD later and see what was going on there. It seemed like I upgraded it, but the cost didn't update. When I did, I don't know. Maybe I'm just seeing things. Because I recently, like when I was implementing all these upgrades, I also did some code refactoring. So that might have messed up some of the UI elements not updating properly. But I don't know. I also haven't quite decided upon how to progress between the different tiers that I want to implement. Since right now it's just gonna like, oh, every time you complete a level, it's gonna load up a new tier 1 level. And there's nowhere in the game that sort of illustrates to, like, visualizes to you what tier you're currently playing on. It just shows you the modifier. So I've been thinking of putting in like another box here that says T1 up to T5 to give you an idea of every level also which tier it is. Because, you know, since the modifier will display the appropriate one for whichever level you're currently in, might as well put the tier in as well. As to how you progress to the higher tiers, not entirely sure. I suppose it would be something you'd have to unlock by getting far enough into the game somehow. Though I haven't quite figured out how I want to do that. One idea I did play with, like on a conceptual level, is whether or not it would be a fun idea to say like, oh, if you want to go to a higher tier level, you need to do the same quest but at higher quest cost or something like that. Or when you complete a level, you just decide, oh, you want to go to a higher tier. Another thing I've also sort of realized is that I might have to make it so that your level modifier is also tier dependent. Because otherwise, say you get a modifier up to like 10, say, and then you jump to a tier 2 level for the first time, then all the resources would be at modifier level 11, meaning that getting the resources in order to improve your tier 2 harvesting capabilities might become really, really tedious to do. Because most likely, just like with the tier 1 upgrades, you need those secondary resources that drop when you completely harvest something. But because of the modifier, now the rocks would have like over hundreds worth of, you know, stone in them, but you only get one per click. So having to click everything, you know, over 100 times doesn't really go well with the whole idea of making the game in a way where you don't, you know, need an auto clicker. So that's like some of the things that I've been thinking about how to address. Do we have everything? No, what are we missing? Mushroom logs. Okay. Do we have everything? I think we have everything. Put that on save slot 2. And then this is where the this like the final story level that is currently implemented. So they basically go and find this hermit. But then, oh, who's this? Strangers trying to get into like this old ruined building. So the idea is that, you know, this is supposed to introduce like the main antagonists or supposed antagonists for the story of the game. Thanks for the lurk there, Ammo. But yeah, still not sure if this is what I want to go with. Also, the assets for the character avatars are also temporary. They're just like assets I have a license to use for like an asset pack. But this seems fitting enough to get the general gist across. But yeah, one issue I do have right now is that some of this dialogue goes on a lot longer than I realized when I was making it. And this level does also have a couple issues. So for one, I deliberately made it so you can't harvest any of the resources in here. Because it's a story level, so you're not, you know, supposed to, I guess you could say. But that is, for one, a bit confusing, right? So that's one aspect. The other is that you can leave this level at any point in time. And even though I'm using the quest completion sort of 3D element or whatever, as opposed to the one where you abandon it, which is a huge X, because they have the same color and everything, it's like not clear that you can just leave this level and return and continue later. Because this quest down here literally asks you to get your mineral and woodcutting levels up to level 50 in order for you to continue onwards. And this is not an upgrade building. It actually does look different too. It doesn't have a tiled roof, but it does have the same shape, so also a bit, you know, potentially confusing. So all of a sudden you have a level where you can't do anything in really, but you feel like you should be able to, so you might just feel, oh, I'm just missing something, and it should be so obvious. But the actual gist is that you get here and then you just get that initial dialogue, see, oh, I can't progress yet, and then you leave it. Because as soon as you leave it, you get another icon on your UI, which allows you to return back to this level at any given point in time. And now the reason why that might be a bit confusing as well is that if we go into this level here and actually read the abandoned area description, it will not only reduce the multiplier by 1, but it also resets your streak counter for 1. And most importantly, it will also abandon any remaining quests in this area. The same happens if you complete a level, actually. So the idea being that you want to complete as many quests as possible in order to get access to those processing and generating buildings before you move on, essentially. And the reason why I did that is because some of the buildings require materials from other levels in order to complete those quests. So it's a matter of like, oh, okay, getting the resources in your stockpile first, and instead of just having access to a lot of different resources, then you basically sort of future-proof yourself by collecting resources that you might potentially need later. But at any rate, it's all a work in progress. And for the current levels that are in the game, like, I've mainly been trying to focus on getting the visuals and themes to a certain point where I'm happy with them. So that's why there's only like one level that looks like this, with the swamp, mangrove trees, and this serpentinite stone that gives you gold. Similar to how there's only a few levels that have lava in them, or these there's only one that has these mushroom logs. Like, this is actually also the only underground level, if you can you can consider that, right? So moving forward, something I want to do is add more variety, so that there's more than just one swamp level, basically. The only reason one of the main reasons why I haven't done that yet is because there's that whole tier-based system in the game that I want to implement, and gold ore is going to be like a higher tier resource along with serpentinite, so that means that in theory this is going to be a higher tier level eventually, one of many. But even though this might be a tier 2 level or tier 3 or whatever it ends up being, I can still, you know, mix in tier 1 resources, because they're sort of like biomes, right? So you can have a pine forest that leads up to like another like swampy biome, if you will. And then that way you can justify having lower tier resources inside higher tier levels, but then still like the majority are gonna be higher tier resources too. Everything from fish to stone, trees, bushes. Again, like also these herbs and stuff might just end up being like a higher tier at some point, but right now it's what it is, one step at a time, right? And instead of only having the pine tree biomes available in the current state of the game, I'd rather have like more like variety in the levels than just 10 different pine tree biomes. So something that's really neat now is that because we saved this level here, this cave level, we've been getting copper for free ever since we unlocked that quest. And as long as we keep this level bookmarked or saved into a save slot with that quest being completed, then this is gonna just keep providing us with resources. Reminds me to save the game. Because I have not implemented autosaving yet either. That's also something that isn't gonna take a long time to do, and it's one of the next things I'll probably implement. And once that and these new implemented upgrades are behaving exactly as they should, and everything seems fine, and that's gonna be the next, like, stable version of the game. But, okay, so that's the upgrade building. I remember this level does have an herb garden, which just requires resources from this level. There we go. This is gonna provide us with free lush roots every 24 seconds. And if I remember correctly, those are used, yeah, those are used for the herb amount upgrades. I have mainly been focusing on wood and stone as the primary resources for progressing, but that's just because there's a lack of levels right now. I think there wasn't there also another quest around here? I can't remember. No, doesn't seem like it. Mangrove leaves. I think we got everything. That's another thing I also want to do at some point. Oh, what am I missing? Is it the logs? It's the logs, okay. At some point I want to make it so that it's a bit more clear whether or not you have enough resources, but I have taken a bit of a look at it, and it seems like I might have to do some code refactoring to facilitate that. And even though it gives you usability improvements, it doesn't add more content to the game at the moment. So I'm still debating on whether or not that's going to be one of the next things I'm also going to improve. Because it's not like I can't do it. It's just a matter if I should. Oh yeah, and ever since we went to that story level, every single level after that has been randomly chosen. So beyond the first level and the cave, everything else is randomly selected. Now, one quirk with the game is that if you want to encounter these caverns again, but at a higher modifier, you have to deliberately override that save slot too, which you can do if you complete a level. So for instance, yeah, we're starting to require a lot of resources in order to complete these. Hey Bacon, good to see you. Holy shit, it's been a while since I've heard from you. Hope you're doing well. I'm doing pretty well myself. Just I'm excited and terrified at the same time, because I've released my game today. Actually, I haven't tested if this link works still. I think it does. Yeah, it is the right one. So yeah, I just figured since it's released today that I would show it off, basically. I'm also planning to give out like what do you call it? Free game keys to any streamers that want to cover it at some point, but I totally forgot about like requesting them on time, so I literally did that earlier today. Oh, thanks. I do hope that it suits your fancy. It is a bit of a... I don't know if you would call it a different kind of game. I guess you could say that it's a bit of a different kind of game. Because it is a bit of a blend of genres, but... there's just some things that I don't really... like, without trying to... how should we say, like, brag or anything, or whatever you want to call it, but... like, I've played a lot of games in my time. And as I've been working on this, like, more and more, it's been turning into something I can't really put a finger on another game and say, like, oh yeah, it's like this or that, basically. Cool, cool. Yeah, I really hope it ends up doing well. Otherwise, yeah, I don't know really what I'm gonna do. Okay, let's maybe upgrade this a bit. Ooh. If you want, I can try and coordinate it so that I can come hang out, but it depends on when you're planning on streaming and such. Because over the next couple weeks, there's like so many things that I need to focus on, because one is that I need to be, you know, communicating with everyone who decides to invest into it. But at the same time, I also, you know, preferably should improve the actual quality of the game. But yeah, I decided to launch it with a 20% discount sale. Start at 6 PM EST US. Let me just put that in a... write that down. There we go. Now I've at least written it down, then I can take a stance on it later. Because yeah, I am working solo on this project. Which I don't know if I've bitten off more than I can chew in the big scope of things, but I'm at least trying, you know. So far it's been working out. There's not really like any major hurdles that I haven't been able to overcome. Because that's one of the things that when I was working on this game in its early stages that I wanted to make sure before like commercializing it or anything that I could actually make the game, you know? Because there were some things that I was a bit worried about in the grand scope of things. Like if I would be able to implement a saving and loading system properly. If the game would run fairly well on mid-tier hardware, which I'm not entirely sure. I've tried running this on my now 7+ year-old laptop, essentially. And that was a mid-range laptop for its time too, so take that for whatever you want, but it does run on the laptop in the worst possible conditions, where all the graphics settings are at the lowest, but in terms of game mechanics, I have 5 or all the levels without any resources harvested loaded at the same time. That's like the worst case scenario performance wise. And yeah, it was running at like 15 FPS or something, but again, we're talking about an ancient laptop at this point, so at least on my current setup, I have not had any issues with performance when running it as like, you know, a build, if you will. Do we care about the fishing quest? It does give you resources, but I haven't upgraded any of my fishing tools. So we would probably want to go back and get like the correct type of fish for that. But I only have this level, so even with these fish, I wouldn't really be able to upgrade much. One thing that I remember some people sort of requesting or like suggesting at least in like a very early alpha version of this was the ability to go back to like a home base that you would expand upon and build up essentially. I do like the idea of having like an area where you as a player can have some agency in what you do, like where you put down buildings and what buildings those might be and so forth. Essentially like a single level that you can decorate out however you want. But in order to allow for that to happen, that would take a lot of effort. A lot of specific mechanics in order for you to be able to put down buildings and such. And that would probably take several months to implement, I would imagine. Because it would require the game mechanics and it would require the UI and everything else too. Sounds and so forth, all the assets. Yeah, that's just a long list of things. So I don't really want to promise that at all. Not at the current point in time, at least. So the current goal for the game is, like, as far as development goes, is that I want to try and get this infinite mode fleshed out as much as possible. And get that to a point where there are some things, like some overarching goals that you can aim for in the sense of like accomplishment, instead of it just being like collecting all the resources, right? Because right now there's a lot of resources that aren't even doing anything. Take for example these sheep. When you take those out, they drop you sheep wool and mutton, but it's not used anywhere. I do have ideas on how to improve upon that though. One of them being that, and I've sort of started implementing it, or at least I have an idea on how to implement it. But if we look at these upgrades, you can have in that the resource cost overview up to, how many is it? 16 different resources listed, meaning that in theory, I could make it so that once you upgrade, say, tier 1 wood amount to level 15, 25, or whatever balancing wise is going to be appropriate, then it's going to add a third type of resource to the cost, so that as you upgrade it further and further, you're also going to need more resource variations in order to do those upgrades. And that is sort of one way that I'll be able to scale up the resource costs in a non-linear fashion without it just being more of the same, you know what I mean? Because that's one of the issues I have with some idle games, if not most of them. Their economy is cool and all, but it's just more of the same, you know? is either that, or you move from one stage to the next where it's more of the same but with a reskin. I don't know if that makes any sense. True, you could argue it's pretty much the same in this case, but it's more than just a red cube as opposed to a blue cube, but rather like a completely different level layout with its own quests, its own resources, its own visuals, and potentially also like, you know, own game mechanics. Since everything is gonna be tier-based eventually, I can also make it so that higher tier levels also improve, or not improve, but expand on the complexity of the game, so allowing you to do more and more things in higher tier levels. What do we need? We need catcher leaves. Those are herbs. That's some of these. I haven't upgraded my herbalist skills yet. Yeah, we need those roots in order to do so. But yeah, could be cool to have like a home base that you could decorate however you want. Because that would give you like say if there were like that were implemented, and I made a build menu where you could essentially, oh man, now my brain just starts moving into directions. But like one thing that could be cool is say like, oh okay, if you want to be able to decorate your home area with pine trees, you need to have fully harvested X amount of pine trees, and then in order to decorate it with the pine trees you need pine tree related resources, right? I don't know exactly how that would work out, since modifiers and how resource costs and progression scaling and all that, but it could be interesting to do it that way at least, so that you essentially unlock decorative options for your home area. Exactly how to implement a home area, I'm not sure though, because you could also then make the question, well, what about the terrain? Is it gonna be like the same home area every single time and a prefixed or a preset layout, you know, like the tutorial level is, for instance? Because this level does not go back into the rotation, so if you override the save slot for this one in a new save, you'll just never be able to return to this. Which is not necessarily like, you know, it's not a detriment, because eventually all these resources run out anyway, and there are no buildings in here that produce infinite resources or anything that you need. Granted, this is the only level right now that has sheep in them, but that's more of like just an introductory thing. And I do seem to remember that these are also finite, like eventually they stop spawning too. Okay, let's get that herb harvesting rate up. Much better. Some other things that I've contemplated, and it's also on the drawing board, and I have experimented with a bit, is right now, you know, we have these storyline quests, but if the actual way to progress is just more of the same again, but just higher default numbers, you know, level 50 is pretty high when you start out, well, that might also get kind of stale as you move forward, and then you would only be doing this for the dialogue, you know, and then the actual completion requirements would just be sort of, you know, to put it bluntly, padding if you will. But something I have been experimenting with is the concept of in-world puzzles. So basically, think your classic Zelda-like puzzles, whether it be like, say, a light mirror kind of type puzzle where you have to redirect light in through a room or something. I actually do have a working puzzle like that, which, you know, I could make a level that has those placed around in the level, and then you need to redirect it into a certain spot in order to progress the storyline or to complete the level or what have you. And that could be cool. I mean, it would be a break from the normal core loop of the game, right? Because the main loop of the game is collecting resources and upgrading your tools so you can get more resources, so that you can build up your modifier to get to higher modifier levels, because the quest costs are also scaling with your modifier. So if you don't upgrade your harvesting capabilities, eventually it's just going to take you forever in order to progress. But beyond that, right now, there's not really like any other overarching goals than getting these upgrades up to a high level, really. Or obtain specific resources from specific levels in order to progress. Since the quest after this one requires resources from very specific levels, as they are. Right. There's not a lot of granite left in this level. I'm also wondering if I should somehow visualize what secondary resources can drop from these. Because every single resource that drops secondary resources have a sort of loot table. So there's a chance as to whether or not those secondary resources spawn. And then there's like also a table that sort of, or not a table, but yeah, values that define the range in which how much you can get. Okay. So let's do number 3. Hold on, I'm a little bit congested here. Okay, hopefully that works. Hopefully that does the trick. Yeah, energy drinks have the tendency to do that. Actually, cold drinks in general. Especially when I am speaking a lot. But this is a city level sort of test I've made to try out how these sort of man-made structure elements work out in a completed level. It's also the most vertical level I currently have, where you can get up pretty highly. So yeah, it's like one of those things that I found quite quirky about the game, is that you see it from like the third person perspective, but it's still like sort of an exploration adventure game. So I have the ability to like hide small treasures, or, you know, just putting quests in different elevations and different spots means that you have to explore the levels in order to find them, right? It's not like you get a quest marker that tells you to go over here or over there or anything. And you don't really need a minimap because, I mean, you're already seeing it from a top-down perspective to begin with. You're also not restrained in movement because, well, you know, again, you don't have a character that runs around. So some things that make this level special is that we would need pine planks into making this market here. Now the thing is, in order to get those, in order to get those pine planks, you would need to get those in another level, which, yeah, is not this one. I'm trying to remember what else we can do here. We can buy a mystery box. We can complete it. But we probably want to collect some oak wood while we're here. And this is one of those cases where I haven't quite made up my mind on how to do things. So if we look here, for instance, there are these auto collectors, actually, these auto collectors that you can unlock. So to unlock the forester, we need 5,000 oak wood, which is these oak logs, and 1,000 copper coins, which we do have. So why don't we go ahead and unlock that, actually? And this is currently the only level in the game that has oak trees, which means that in order to even unlock the forester, you first have to randomly stumble upon this one. Which, you know, is one of those debates I'm having with myself, because on one hand, it's, you know, kind of necessary for there to be a random selection of levels, like a bit of RNG there. But at the same time, I can also see it getting a bit annoying in the long run, since you don't have control over exactly which levels you get to. Meaning that in some instances you might find yourself just cycling through levels until you randomly get into a particular type that you're looking for. The only thing that I can sort of counter that with, I guess, is that once the tiers are implemented appropriately, that problem will become significantly smaller, as tier 1 levels will, you know, contain the tier 1 resources. And right now, all the levels that are represented are actually like ideas for all 5 tiers. So lava related levels could end up being like tier 4, swamp levels could be tier 5, snow levels could be tier 3, that kind of stuff essentially. Though I haven't decided on which would be what tier yet. And not necessarily, you know, a snow level doesn't necessarily have to be a higher tier either, since it's mainly dictated by the type of resources that are in it, right? And as an example, actually, the snow level in this case just contains granite and pine trees, but they're covered in snow. So I do have the capability of making like, you know, tier 1 resource levels that still have variation in it. And this level would also be a T1, since oak trees are probably gonna stay as a T1 resource. And are also required for the forester amount upgrade, yeah, and the unlock, most importantly. So there we go, we just bought the forester, so that gives us access to our first auto harvester. So if we click this button, we now get this sphere that we can put down anywhere in the world. And whenever the timer counts down, it harvests every resource in the area by the amount that it can harvest at. So let's just upgrade that a couple times. So now it basically collects, what, 6 wood from every tree or something? I think, yeah, in the area. One thing to note though is that as we upgraded the amount here, it also reduces the size and speed of it. So now instead of taking 3 seconds per harvest, it takes a little over 4, and it's also a smaller radius. And there's a reason for that. There's also limitations on how small it can be. But if we look here, we have the size and speed upgrades up here for the forester, which requires citron and lightning essence, which we can get from the cave level, and pine wood, which we can get from other levels. My guess is that we're going to be low on lightning essence though. Yep. But the idea with these is that you can essentially put them down in a highly, resource rich sort of area, and then just go to another level and it'll continue to harvest resources for you while you're away. You can only have one, auto harvester though, so if I add this to this level and I go back to this townscape, it is no longer here. And you can technically also, because when you click on the icon it just follows your mouse around, you can technically also use this as an AoE harvester, though, you still have the timer. Right, so we wanted to get some citron collected for that lightning essence. I haven't mentioned this, but even these secondary resources, you don't actually have to click them in order to harvest them. So given enough time, they'll just collect themselves. That was kind of implemented as like a sort of a happy accident, I don't know. Like I felt like I had to do it regardless because of performance reasons, right? Because say you never collect them and they just keep building up, that would be a bit problematic. But there's also actually the possibility that resources can fall over the edge. I don't know if I actually have any. Yeah, the resources would have to be like really close to the edge, but it is actually possible for things to just fall over the edge and just fall into the abyss. You just have to be lucky unlucky, since the resources just, they shoot off in a random direction with. Can't remember if it's a fixed velocity or whatever. Yeah, it's really hard to trigger, but it is possible. So yeah, they will just keep falling if that happens, until eventually they're collected themselves. Something else that I wanted to experiment when I was making these initial levels, like this one, is the lighting setting, because like the light atmosphere. Because one thing that's different about this cave level, for instance, is that it's much darker, and it also has like fog and such, to sort of give you the feeling of being underground, and also make this lava seem a bit more intense, that kind of stuff. As opposed to some of the other levels which have like basically the same light setting right now, but it allows me to also make it so that if I wanted to, this level being a nighttime level, just to give it a different atmosphere and mood. So what do you need for this one again? Oh yeah, you need obsidian. And we haven't been to that level, so can't do that. That's also part of the reason why this is an experimental build. Because some of the resource costs for the upgrades are not really... I don't know if balance is the right word, but they're not really... finalized, I suppose you could put it as that. What I mean is like... for instance, fire essence is only existing in one level. So it's by nature really difficult to acquire, but at the same time, it's also needed in order to upgrade the processing and generating building speeds. Along with the copper ingots that are also only acquirable in this level, specifically if you built the smithy and have queued resources up, and you also like have it in a save tab in the long run, because if you abandon this level, then you're obviously not going to keep your access to that smithy intact either. And it's not really like a big problem at face value until you realize that to complete the level you need copper ingots as well. And since that scales with the multiplier and everything, it sort of creates this slightly obnoxious situation where you need copper ingots in order to upgrade the processing speeds, but you also need to be in this level in order to get those copper ingots made. And that's only going to be more tedious as your modifier builds up, and you also need the fire essence, which is only available in one level at the moment. But I'm working on it. Not exactly sure how I want to get around it, because I did just recently implement the ability to, whatchamacallit, like upgrade these auto harvesters in the first place, not to mention having to unlock them too. In the current main build or stable build, these auto harvesters are already unlocked. They have a fixed rate and a fixed size and everything. Okay. I've also been thinking about whether or not to add like a 3D icon on top of these different building types, because especially like in this cityscape level here, it might be a bit difficult for someone to differentiate like this building up here from the upgrade building. The only thing that really sets them apart is the color of the tiles at the moment. Red tiled, this red tile building being the one where you upgrade your buildings in, or upgrade everything in. I think these are green tiled buildings. I think this is green tiles. It looks green. It's a bit hard to see with the lighting. But those are the processing buildings, and then yellow is for the generating buildings. As an example, this is a copper mine. But if we go to this level, the runaway marshes, find it, you'll notice that the herb garden building here also has yellow tiles. It's one of those instances where like I'm not sure if I want to make assets for every single one of these producing buildings, or if I just want them to be more of like a generic template driven system. Because the benefit of doing it this way is that I don't have to make a lot of assets to make more buildings available. Downside being that, well, they don't look so good. Like, they look fine, but obviously this doesn't look like an herb garden, right? The only way you could sort of argue the type of building is the context in which it's placed. Say if you imagine, okay, this is a mine, so that's why there's a smithy and a copper mine here. Maybe. But even that's a bit of a stretch, right? But I digress. Do we want to abandon the level? Not really, if we can help it. Yeah. Probably need more tuna. Oh yeah, definitely need more tuna. Haven't been getting any good level, like a lot of levels that have the right type of fish though, so... How much tuna do we need again? 750, damn. So this is where, like, you would, if you don't want to use the auto clicker, you would have to make a choice whether or not just to harvest through this, because the amount of resources here probably should be more than enough. Or if you want to, like, abandon the level to reduce your multiplier, so that the next level you load doesn't get even more grindy, if you want to put it that way. Because it's all about managing your resources and then the tactical decisions on whether or not to actually build up your multiplier or not. But yeah, now we have 5 different levels that we can go to. Technically 6 if you count the active level, and technically 7 if you also count the story level. And this is the snow level, of course. Good reason, or the good thing about that is that we have these quartz crystals. Oh hey, Death Finger. Good to see you again. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for joining in here today. So these quartz crystals should give us some wind essence, which we needed in order to upgrade the manual processing speed, which is going to be useful for later. I think we also, if I remember correctly, yeah, there's a quest here that requires some of it. Let's get that loot box. I'm showcasing the game that I've been working on for the last, well, I would say months, but technically speaking it's way longer than that. Oh, I'm not popping up on your list? I don't know. I haven't been streaming much lately, so that could be part of it. I've been very busy working towards this early access release for my game that, well, it's an early access today. Okay. Thanks. That means a lot. It's been a long time coming, and there's still a lot more that I want to accomplish with it. And if it ends up with enough success that I can keep a development running, then definitely want to continue working on it. Because the idea is sort of to work on this full time, but yeah. Can't do that for free, sadly. It's D-Life being broken. Alright. Yeah, I wouldn't know. Might as well put that down there. Get some more pine wood. Let's get the range of that upgraded, actually. Sure. Can't remember if this gets sent back to, like, also get Stream Elements doesn't share that to D Live, but if I do like... Wait, does that actually get... Does that get sent over to D Live, or does that only get sent to Twitch? Can't remember. Okay. Because... figured something like that. Restream does its thing. What I can do though is I can do like this instead. I just had to open my Restream chat overlay to do that though. But it works. Otherwise you can just search MonsterStone on the Steam store and find it that way. There's not exactly a lot of games called that, so... thankfully, it's fairly easy to find. Noticed. You might want to upgrade the harvest rate for wood. There we go. Sure. No pressure. Well, thanks for dropping in during your break. Yeah, the plan for me today is just to play this game on stream a little bit, showcasing what it's all about. Because even though this is like polished and stuff like that, it's still got a long ways to go. There's even features that I have semi-implemented that still need to make its way into the game. Like one of the things that I've been working on at some point is an item/artifact based system. And I've gotten most of it working. Like they can spawn in, they can be equipped into an artifact slot. It's just that there's no stats involved, like it doesn't affect anything. But then the way it works is that whenever you open a chest, I can add those to the loot table for the chests, and then that's how you get more of them. And they're also scaled according to the level modifier, so that it's like a way for you to get improvements to your different stats and whatnot without like having to invest resources into it directly anyway. It's also a way to make rewards more exciting, because it is a little bit lame to just only get more resources from the chests, right? So okay, do we want to stick around here? Don't really need to, but let me just see. Okay, that's level 5. Yeah, I figured. What do we need? Okay, we need more wind essence. Yeah, that's enough wind essence for this. Wow. Jeez. Blender. That's also what I'm using. I like Blender. Blender's cool. I definitely prefer to Autodesk software. There's just something about like I really don't like Autodesk Maya, which is the 3D modeling program our university back in the day wanted us to use. Anycubic. I'm not really that familiar with 3D printing, but sounds good. 3D printing is cool though. it does allow for a lot of things that weren't really possible until they were like available to the common person. Yeah, I remember talking with some other friends of mine about 3D printing and using Blender for it. And the main thing that I mentioned to them was just like, okay, you need to make sure that you get the like measurement system in place so that it works out, because that could get like really iffy if you don't get that right. Okay, there's definitely some issues with the UI here, I can see that. Not sure what it is though. Yeah, so sometimes when I click this, it upgrades the increases the cost, but it doesn't increase the level number. It's like it skips one. There, it did it again. Wonder why that is. Okay. That's something I have to probably note down. I don't think it happens in the live version of the the main build of the game at the moment. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have to be fixed. Yeah, that's like something that seems pretty common when people talk 3D printing, is to like make minis of it with good reason. Like what do you call it? Miniatures from like, no, how do you even say that? So it's like, you know, companies that make miniature molds and stuff. Those miniatures are usually pretty dang expensive. And a big issue with, like, say, if you want to use it for a D&D campaign, is that you're sort of limited to the design that whoever, like, the artist came up with. But with 3D printing, it's so cool that, what is it called? Hero Foundry, Hero Forge, or whatever the heck that service is called. Where you can like customize your own mini, essentially based off of modular pieces or something. I've not used it, so this is just like, I might be talking out of my ass, but this is just as far as I've seen and heard about it. That's what it's for. And then you can 3D print those minis essentially, if you have the tools to do so, or even get, you know, commission it to be 3D printed by a company. Yeah, like that's really cool, because you can just take the head sculpt of like say a dragonborn, and then put it onto like a ranger generic torso or something like that, and then you can have like a dragonborn ranger, but then have the ranger wield an axe instead of a bow, and etc. There's just like so many possibilities all of a sudden. And that's not really something that would be feasible through traditional mold injection and then selling those, right? Because these models need to be customized to the individual. That too. Actually, when one of the first story time, I guess, one of the first business development courses, programs I went to, like many years ago, like over 2 years ago, when I first was releasing the initial demo version of this game, because yes, there has been a game demo for this out for 2 years, by the way. Anyway, back then there was actually another team on the program too, and they were doing 3D printing commissions, meaning that they would work together with other companies that needed stuff to be 3D printed, and then doing it to order, essentially. And that was the whole process from making the cat designs to the 3D printing and all the iterations that followed, essentially. And from what I understand, they were being successful with it. They were basically just there to get some of the business development tips and tricks in place. So yeah, absolutely, you can definitely do that. There's always someone who'll be looking, like, especially custom stuff, right? Custom stuff is such a nice market, especially because it is that custom, right? So they usually would, if not always, would need someone else to make it for them. So you'd always have work. It did seem like you need to be very proactive about getting customers, though, and build up that reputation. It's gonna take time. Okay, we're almost at level 50. Also, this is the level where you get you can build the carpenter workshop. The catch being that you need oak logs and palm leaves, which you can't get in this level, and actually you need to go to 2 separate ones. Namely the desert, of course, and then the cityscape one, in order to even get that. And then in return, that gives you the ability to, you know, process pine planks, which you can then use in this cityscape level to make a marketplace. But the thing is, since I already completed the main quest, the quest to make that marketplace was, you know, abandoned, essentially. So that's where some of the balance in the game is a bit wonky, because, well, this is the only place that you can get oak trees, and you need those oak trees to make the carpenter's workshop. So if you get to this level first, you won't be able to build the carpenter's workshop, but you'll see, oh, I need oak logs and palm leaves, even though you might not even have seen the levels that, you know, provide those resources. But then you need to first go to the cityscape, get the oak logs, and preferably enough of it to future-proof yourself. And then you need to cycle through levels again until eventually you reach to this level again, so that you can get your planks. And then either make enough planks then and there for future proofing yourself, or, you know, saving this into like one of your save slots. And most importantly, you would need, if you've saved like this level like I do, you would need to override that too, so that it re-enters the randomizer pool, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to revisit this level with the quest being, you know, back to being active. It's complex. All right, the finger. Talk to you later. Thanks for dropping by. For free and how you see it, what you wanted to print something but not want to spend the money to do it, or a printer, and just pay a small fee to have someone else do it. Yeah, though it's also the design process for some companies, though, just to like make a little bit of a comment on that, because especially like or most companies might not necessarily have the, or most likely wouldn't have, you know, employees available that could actually do the design files for 3D print. Because if they had that, they would probably already be able to 3D print to begin with, right? And then they would just make it in-house. So outsourcing the production of the actual CAD files and whatnot might also be something preferable. And you could also sell those you would also sell those files as well, right? As a product, as part of your service. Which in return also means that the company that's commissioning you for work would, you know, be able to tweak it later too. So they could either take those documents, I guess, and return to you to get those tweaks done, or they could technically go to another customer. But my suspicion is that if you do a good work or a good job, then they would obviously return to you, because that is more hassle-free. Okay. So I think the goal is that we're just gonna try and see if we can't get our harvesting things upgraded. We're almost there, right? Yeah, we're there now. So this is one of those dialogue trees that's really long. And some early playtesters did also comment on that, so it's not something I can just, like, you know, brush under the rug and just ignore in the long term. So especially like if you actually, you know, read through all the dialogue. And you can skip through it if you want to, of course. It's not the longest dialogue, though. I think this is one of the longer ones. But I could just click through this, and then you just have to play the game in order to see it for yourself, I guess. So let's just do that. Because it's like, this is like an exposition sort of segment, right? And I don't know if, like, the dialogue is going to be a big issue in the long run, because, like, for instance, this segment here, I could split that up into multiple smaller parts. I just don't want to make it so split up that, oh, now you complete one step and then you gotta go out and play the game, if you will, and then half an hour later you get back and you didn't get to do the next step, but you've forgotten half of what was already set in the previous stage of this quest, because there's no quest log or anything implemented that gives you a summary of what's been going on, you know. Which actually that would be something I'd have to implement at some point if these main storyline quests are gonna stay in the game for towards like a, you know, full release. That gives us the, I think, final quest, if I remember correctly, to repair the mechanism, and that requires gold, wind essence, lightning essence, and fire essence, one of which we haven't even seen yet. And we do have some gold, but we don't have enough. And all the essences are secondary resources, so you're, you know, a bit restricted to RNG, and also the modifier to affect how much of it you get at a time. So for gold ore, we should be getting a pretty decent amount, because it's a modifier free. And it's also like a core resource, essentially. Okay, that's enough gold at least. So what do we need on this one? We need pine wood, granite. Okay, nothing too complex. Let's override level slot. Okay, what do I need? Not copper ore. What about the sticks? Branches or whatever? No. Actually, pine wood itself. Okay. Oh, right. Probably because we upgraded the wood harvesting amount. Oh, and that this is like another tier 1 level, similar to this level that we just got to, which is also technically a tier 1 level. That's what I mean, like, I can play around with the level design to add verticality and have different, like, styles of rock and composition of resources, how much water there is, all that stuff. You know, it's everything, all the elements of a level I can sort of utilize to make them a bit more diverse. And since this one has a lot of caves in it with these extra chests in them, it gives you sort of a reason to explore around and find them too. Some are slightly exposed, so you can sort of see them out of the corner of your eye, but others you have to sort of dig for. And of course, you know, I made the game, so I have a bit of a better idea of where the things are and such, but it's, you know, kind of just what you would have to explore for yourself. Okay, I would probably want to upgrade that herb gathering rate. There we go, much better. Okay, how much do we need? 1500, I think? 1600, okay. And we only got a tier 1 common chest. Well, that's nothing too crazy. So the way that the chests work is that there's five different rarities. And for every time it's a higher rarity, opening it will generate those secondary resources according to like an internal loot table. And the amount of resources you get is essentially your level modifier plus the what do you call it, the quality of the chest. So if it's the lowest quality chest, then it's essentially like, you know, a modifier of 9. But if it's the highest quality chest in this case, of course, then it's what, quality of 13 instead, or a multiplier of 13. And then the types of resources can vary depending on the quest that rewards them, as well as what level you find them in. So for instance, chests in this cave level can yield you, or currently yields you, I think they're emeralds. I don't believe I have any remaining chests. I already opened those. But we did get these emeralds here. There you go. Hey, Power Dude. Good to see you. How are you doing? Thanks for dropping by. Just showcasing my little game today. Hmm. All right, this is the level we're at. Yeah. I've been a little bit stressed out towards this release, so it's just like finally the day is here. It's out. Well, in early access anyway. Yes, it is. Just do this, I guess. I'm just like showcasing a bit of what it's like, or at least the experimental branch build of it. It is all like the experimental branch that I'm playing right now is available on Steam too. You just have to go into the beta section and then choose it essentially. I haven't encountered anything great game breaking, but I have, well, yeah, I have found some bugs that I do need to address. But yeah, we've got more upgrades now. That's like the main difference between the stable version and then this version. Keep forgetting that I have this auto harvested too. Can't afford upgrades to it though. What do we need? We need bushy leaves, lush roots, and sunbleak. Sunbleak are those fish that we already got from the water. And that's an herb, should be here, okay. That means we need bushy leaves. That's good to hear. It's really hard for me to like look at my game sometimes and say like, oh, you know, have I actually accomplished a lot or not? Because a bunch has happened since the demo version on itch.io, for instance. I mean, that version didn't even have sound in any shape or form. And I mean, now there is an entire options menu with graphic settings and sound settings too, as well as keybinds. All that wasn't in there. Yeah, I've tried to find something that suited it that I was actually allowed to use, so I think I've managed to do something fairly decent. It was pretty interesting because I've never worked with I'm using the sound engine that's called Wise, spelled W-W-I-S-E. It's really cool because you can do so much with it, and it makes music and sound implementation much easier. But it does require a little bit of, you know, it does have a learning curve, but the benefits definitely show. Because it's a, as they call it, a non-destructive work environment. Meaning that you basically import the raw sounds, and as you set them up in Wise, you can modify them, cut them down, like change the settings of it, the pitch, mix sounds together to make new ones, all that without ruining the source files. And that means that you basically never lose any data. And then instead you build a, what's it called again? Crap. Can't remember what the name of it was. Sound library? No, what's it called again? I can't even remember the term for it. Doesn't really matter, but you basically compile it down and then generate everything for your game. Yeah, well, I mean, you do external editing in Wise. It has its own like interface and editor and everything. It's just that you do it in Wise, and then in Unity you just tell Unity what sounds to play and when. To a certain extent even. because you can also use Unity parameters to tell Wise when to do certain things. So for instance, let's take all these resources as an example, right? In Wise, I basically have a list that contains all the different types of sounds for wood when you press, or herbs when you press, and mining. And then based off of a flag, Wise just chooses the correct sounds to play whenever you interact with the right thing. So all you have to do in Unity is just to set up the assets correctly, and then Wise does everything else as long as you've basically coded Wise to do it for you. But it's very, like, once you know how to do it and get into it, it's mostly just selecting the correct options and then just giving them names. It's not like you have to go in like deep code wise where you can make syntax errors and stuff like that simply by putting a bracket in the wrong place or something. And that's not really a thing. And it's all event based, so it's pretty neat. And to top it all off, their licensing options are also pretty good. I can't remember how many unique sounds you're allowed to have, but I haven't hit that limit yet. And it's like, if I understood how it works, until you hit that limit, I don't think you have to even pay any licensing fees. Because it's like, Wise will detect, oh, you've like exceeded this cap now, so you can't build your sound bank. That's what it's called. You can't generate your sound banks because you've hit the limits, essentially. So if you use your source sounds appropriately, you can get away with a lot, essentially, by the sound of it. That's kind of neat. Get 5,000 bushy leaves. Oh yeah, I've also implemented an auto clicker in the game, by the way. So for those that don't want carpal tunnel syndrome, or feel that they're getting it anyway. Wait. I think I can't remember if I wrote it down somewhere, but I think it's about 7. I haven't made any new levels since the initial demo version. The only thing level-wise that's changed is that this storyline level now has trees and rocks in it, as well as some scene pieces like these 2 temporary ones. But other than that, it's the same amount of levels, because I've been focusing on implementing sound, getting these options menu settings into the game so that you can actually adjust your graphic settings to at least some degree. And most importantly, you know, the sound volume settings and all that. Like, you wouldn't think it, but just implementing this menu here, that took a little over a month to do. Yeah. Okay. I mean, the first 3 levels, or first 2 levels, are always going to be the same. From then on, it's randomly selected though. So, it's more of like, yeah, there's just different types of levels. Let's switch it out with number 3, I guess. Oh, perfect. Just the level that we wanted. Okay, so our modifier is getting pretty high, so we need 270 pine planks. Okay, we've got that. I think we can just make it then. Cool, we've got our marketplace. So here we can sell pine logs, catcher leaves, and lava shrimp for, well, copper coins. Yes, they are handcrafted. Every single level is made by hand. Ooh, a heroic chest. Lots of money. Yeah, every single level is handcrafted. I don't know if I could even implement random gen, because even if I did that, it would still be based off of prefabs, and then the game engine would, or the game would just like stitch them together in different ways. So I don't know if that would be preferable, because that would probably make the levels kind of samey very quickly. Money. Yes. That was not worth it. That was not worth it. What a ripoff. Just spent like 2,000 coins to get like a few hundred back. Okay. Yeah, some of those quests are not really balanced. I'm working on it. I'll just see if I can afford it. Nah, I can't. Okay. Yeah, it's the tuna again. Except this time we need even more. But yeah, you can you now have to unlock the auto harvesters that before you just started out the game with. And you can also upgrade the range, speed, and amount that they harvest. You can also improve the processing and generating buildings with speed and amount, as well as the manual crafting speed. And the manual crafting speed refers to that anvil button here, where if you press it, it progresses like the crafting timer forward. Why don't you just complete the game? In what sense? Like complete making the game instead of playing it? I don't know. Because, well, I do know, because today I just want to show it off. Yeah, today I just want to show it off a bit. I've been working on this for, yeah, an eternity is what it feels like. Also, I have noticed now that there's an FPS drop. I have no idea why. Is that because my computer's doing something? Let me just see. Because I can hear my hard drive working. Oh, yep. There's something... Go away, Windows. Stop doing that. But yeah, not sure what there's something called NVIDIA container that's using like almost 20% of my hard drive's capacity. I don't know why. There we go. That should be better though. My hard drive. Or one of my hard drives. Actually, yeah, that's kind of weird. I'm pretty sure that that would be on my M.2 if it's NVIDIA. But the thing that was actually causing problems is like that the Windows based news thing that also shows you the weather forecast and stuff like that. Yeah, that was using like 20% of my processor for some reason. Like madness. Yeah. Another thing that I've also been contemplating if I need to change is that to get to the active level, you basically have to press the same number as the level that you're currently in, otherwise you're just going to switch to another one. So if I want to get back to the main level now, I have to press 5, which, yeah, it's not super intuitive. But that's only done so that I don't need a 6th button that says main level or something. can at least try to entertain lightning. I'm not sure. It could also just be because it's trying to pull news articles off the internet here and there so that they can be presented to you. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's all technically browser-based internally too, so it's like very resource inefficient probably. Definitely have a lot of tuna now. Yeah, the rewards on this level are a little bit lackluster, aren't they? It was actually kind of interesting too, or at least I think it was. So I wasn't sure on how Twitch streaming categories worked, but it's apparently based off a database that is actually like semi-community maintained. So in order for your game to be listed for Twitch streaming, you essentially just have to establish an entry there and then set up all the information about it, like the description and such. And you actually also have to make a page for the developer, the developer behind the game before setting it up for the game itself. Otherwise it won't let you. Get some of those fishies. Okay, so let's save it on save slot 5, I think. And that immediately took us to this level, but now at a modifier of 10. Okay. Well, don't know if we should stick around here. Well, we need wind essence. Let's just use the auto clicker to get some of that, I think. I really need to like randomly load in the lava level because there's some resources there that we need now. But yeah, I mean, if you use the auto clicker for this game, you can get through what's currently there pretty quickly. You might also not, you wouldn't necessarily need these auto harvesters either. And you can also get away with upgrading less, How you get the auto clicker? So you go into the options menu under gameplay and just scroll down to accessibility, and then you just enable it. And you can, I can't remember but I think the default delay is 1 second, but you can set it all down to like 1/10 of a second. You can also set it to whether or not it should be toggled to activate or not. If it's toggle, it basically means as soon as you right click, then it's activated and you just move your mouse around. And if it's not, then you have to hold down your right click in order to activate it. So it doesn't work with all things yet, but it does work for resource collection. Oh, and you can't interact with like buildings whilst it's running. What it means is that, for instance, here you can't just right click and use the auto clicker to, quickly upgrade everything. But yeah, everything else it works for. Also collecting secondary resources, even though it doesn't really have to, but you can. So benefits are that, the auto clicker is not going to interact with any of the UI elements at all whilst it's running, so you don't accidentally like click between all of these for instance. Or like activate the escape menu by accident. And I mean, I kind of wanted to have the auto clicker for testing purposes anyway, so I figured might as well just keep it in as like an accessibility feature and just have it disabled by default. And then let it be up to the player if they want to use it or not. And that's exactly what it's there for. To avoid carpal tunnel syndrome, essentially. Though, you know, I am trying to design the game around not breaking your hand in the first place. That's why the auto harvesters are there. That's why the numbers don't get totally crazy in terms of, you know, resource costs being exponential or something yet. So like a few clicks and I've already harvested a tree, right? And the resources they drop are affected by that modifier too, so even few trees later on, even though they take more effort maybe to harvest, because of upgrades, it's actually less effort for what you gain, right? Pretty challenged already with your day job. But now it's like upgraded to like, you know, 81, so 2 clicks and every single tree is gone. Of course, you know, not as fast as this. But it's a thing. It's also like right now, you know, it's a lot of effort to take out these skeletons because I've been neglecting to upgrade my monster hunting capabilities. But then still, once you do defeat one of these and they drop resources, it's also, you know, a good chunk. So just from those two, I should be able to upgrade this a couple times. Not too crazy. But yeah, it's a work in progress. Technically, if we take out some of these zombos here, we could eventually unlock a monster hunter, though I think that's actually going to take a long time with this current. Yeah, I haven't really for this considered that with enemies, they don't appear in large quantities, right? And they don't always drop the resources that you need, so I'll probably need to make the monster hunter upgrades cheaper as a result. Either that or greatly increase the amount of resources you gain from taking them out. And especially like the manual harvesting, right? Because right now you need skeleton parts in order to do that. And there's only 2 levels in the game that have them. This one and the tutorial level. And the tutorial level only gives you 10 skeletons at most. With this one being like, I can't even remember how the spawning works, but you know, you can kind of tell that it's randomly choosing between skeletons and zombies. But I don't remember how it weights the, I can't remember if it's just like 50-50. It might just be that, but I don't remember. And eventually the mob spawner does run out. I think that was the first zombie arm. Huh. Those are really rare, apparently. Don't think they're needed for anything, no. But yeah, we need 5,000 and we've barely even got, we don't even have 1,000 yet and we've run out of enemies here. Okay, definitely might want to reduce the cost of unlocking the auto harvester for that one. Alright, noted. Bum bum bum. Well, let's see. Can we complete this? Okay, didn't want to bother checking. I really need to implement like a way to check if you have enough resources. Because that is like, as soon as you start having like a, you know, having to scroll through your resources, even though they're sorted based off of categories and such, it's still a bit problematic to keep track of whether or not you have enough to complete your quests. Let's try and just cycle through a couple here by just abandoning them, because I really need that lava level in order to progress. This one, yes. Actually, let's just save the game, it's been a while. So here we can get obsidian and these realgar crystals. And these have the potential to drop fire essence at a low rate. Or not low rate, but like low chance. So yeah, the progression in the current state of the game is a bit wonky. Because in order to unlock the miner, you need 5,000 obsidian, which you can only get in this level. And in order to improve your processing speeds, you need fire essence as well, which you can only get in this level. So essentially, this is one of those levels you would want to not save because you want to re-encounter this level in order to get more of those rare resources. Sort of, that's the idea anyway. And even though we're at a modifier 9 now, you still get these in fairly low quantities. Ooh, unless you're lucky like that. Yeah, let's get the obsidian in order to unlock the miner. And that's the other thing about this level, is that there's not a lot of resources here either. But you burn through it quite quickly. But yeah, it's just a matter of like making it more, how shall we say it, consistent for the 5 different tiers, so that tier 1 levels are more likely to give you some of the resources that you need for the tier 1 and early game upgrades, and then later down the line the same for tier 2, 3, 4 and 5, so that you don't feel like you get stuck in this loop where you intentionally have to cycle through levels just because you're not arriving at the ones that you actually need. Yeah, let's unlock the auto miner. We can use that to help us harvest that realgar. And we should also be able to upgrade a couple times, which reduces the size, but increases the amount. Yeah, and we can't upgrade it more than this because we need more lightning essence. Okay. Back to the caves to actually... Maybe we're better off using it in here. Only problem is that this cave is still in a modifier 2 state, so even though we can get lightning essence in here, it's like very small quantities at a time. And we've also sort of been... Actually, there's not a lot left at all. Oh, okay. So that means there's only a little bit left here. So that means now we also want to re-encounter this level, preferably at like a higher modifier. Ironically, that means that we will lose access to our smithy though, and the ability to make copper ingots, as well as our mine, which this entire time has slowly been yielding us copper at a very small rate, but you know, it's been free resources. Okie dokie, well, we should probably collect as much of this fire essence as possible before we do that though. Because our goal right now is still to get like 500 of the 3 different essences. But in order to do so, it's probably best if we make sure that our harvesting capabilities are also fairly efficient, otherwise it's just going to take forever to do. It's like you can brute force it and just never upgrade anything, but it would take forever. So that's part of the strategy, or whatever you want to call it, element of the game. Managing your resources and not necessarily expend every single resource on upgrades, because you need them for quests that unlock buildings to allow you to process things or generate resources for free whilst you're doing, like, whilst you're progressing in other areas. You know. Well, let's just abandon this level. Okay. And then we want to complete this one because we need to replace number 2. Question is if we can just do that. That'd be nice. Nope. Okay. What are we short on? Got... Okay, mangrove logs. Okay, that's enough of that. Because since I know that... Oh, right, we might as well complete this one so that we have our herb garden. And this is going to be at a... This is at a pretty high modifier, right, compared to the... that cave level, so the timer is pretty big, or long, or however you want to say it, meaning that the potential for upgrades here is equally sizable. So we have a lot of room to improve the speed of this. The net gain of all these producing buildings is always going to be the same as a baseline, meaning if you went to the same level like this one at a modifier of 1, you would still get the same amount of resources in the same time span. The only difference is that because we're at a higher modifier, you multiply the amount you get by 8, but also the time it takes by 8. The main key difference here being that you can cut down the amount of time and improve upon the amount that you get too. But you can only improve the time that it takes to craft stuff down to 1 second. So once you reach 1 second, you can't improve it any further without getting a higher modifier version of the same building. Okay. So it was number 2, yeah. So replace that with level on save slot 2. Excellent. To upgrade it, you need, let me see, these processing building upgrades and generate buildings upgrades. Now right now those are set to copper ingots and fire essence, which means you need to have access to this level with the smithy quest completed in order to make the copper ingots, and preferably also have that processing speed upgraded because it abides by the same rules. So because this is a modifier 9 level, this now takes 9 times as long as the baseline to complete, even though you get 9 times as much and also need 9 times as many resources. But yeah, you do need access to this level essentially to do that. So the modifier is chosen whenever you enter a level, and it depends on whether or not you what your previous modifier was, and then if you complete the main quest for a level, then it increments the modifier for the next one by 1, or if you abandon it instead, it reduces it by 1. So if I were to abandon this level, the next one it randomly selects would be a modifier 8, and if I decide to complete it, the next one would be a modifier 10. And for as long as it's saved in a save slot, it's gonna stay at that modifier. So that's why the snow level has a modifier 10 for everything that happens in this level, whereas near coast here, when we were there, it was modifier 7. And the same for all the other levels that have different modifier levels. So yeah, you can sort of also manipulate it by intentionally abandoning levels instead of completing them, just to lower it down to a point where your harvesting speeds are more appropriate, if you know what I mean. Because now in this level, all these resources, you know, they have 9 times as much baseline resources because it gets multiplied up, and when they drop their secondary ones, it's also 9 times as high. So instead of getting like, you know, up to 10, we're getting around the 20 plus of that lightning essence. And that's sort of part of the infinite loop that is in the core design of this game so far. Because you can essentially keep going, right? Collecting more resources and upgrading it to higher and higher numbers infinitely, because it'll just choose new levels. And I mean, you can get the modifier as high as you want. I don't actually know what happens if it gets beyond like level modifier 999. I don't know if it'll be able to fit up there. I haven't quite thought about that one. But technically speaking, you could keep going. It's just that number can only be increased by 1 or decreased by 1 at a time. Yes, if these numbers get high enough, they start being represented with the scientific notation. I have tested it a bit to see how it works out, and it's like a work in progress. So it'll just say like, you know, 1 point whatever E whatever, essentially. But I'm not entirely sure on how that's gonna work out in the long run, because of course, like, you might have, I don't know, 1 million, let's say, pine logs or something, but your upgrades only require like 1,000 at that point or something, just as an example. Well, how do you know if you have enough? I mean, clearly you have more than enough, but until I implement some kind of highlighting system that shows you the resources in this upgrade menu and compares them with the ones on the inventory on the left somehow. Yeah. I also know how I want to do it. I want to do it so that if you don't have enough, it grays out the number. So it like dims it essentially, because I don't want to use color here for accessibility reasons. And then if you have enough of it, I want it to be like to highlight the whole resource up there essentially. Or just like show it as it is right now in those default colors. The only thing is I don't know if I actually need to highlight them in the inventory or not, because that would also be kind of nice. Or I could dim out the ones that are in the inventory that are not in that list. Why not a tooltip? What do you mean? So what I call a tooltip right now is that thing I have in the bottom, but that's just like, it's just flavor, it doesn't really do anything. And that inventory up here that can contain 16 different resources is the actual resource cost, right? Yeah. Well, I mean, what I would also probably consider doing is to push the resources up in the list temporarily so that they show in the top maybe. So it overrides the sorting, and then when you no longer look at any of these, then it sorts it back to how it normally is. So that it pushes them into the top, and then it also highlights which, or dims out the resources that are irrelevant maybe. And then it highlights the ones, or see, that's the thing, right? Like there's only so many things you can do without introducing color. I can dim it at least to show that you don't have enough, with just dimming down the number value from like a white to a gray color. But then I don't know if I actually need to show if you have enough separately, because that's, you know, kind of what it would just be like now. Because in essence, I suppose you're mostly just interested to, like, okay, so you're interested in knowing if you have enough resources, but it would also be nice to, you know, remind you of how much you have in total at the same time, because otherwise you might end up spending all of your rare resources on certain upgrades unintentionally. Oh, but they would be highlighted. Oh, you mean, yeah. I mean a lot of things. It's hard to tell. So our common friend Peak has also tested out the game, right? And he has an ultra wide monitor. And what happens on ultra wide is that this menu and the craft upgrade menu and the inventory menu get even further apart because they're anchored to the corners of your screen. That would just fill up the right hand side of the menu greatly. So that's kind of what I wanted to avoid too. I didn't want to have too much UI related stuff on one side of the screen. Like when you're interacting with the smithy, it takes up the middle of the screen because you're technically in, like, inside the smithy, so and then that would also be a question of, then I would have to move that to the side maybe too, and then sort of make this entire menu to fit that. I'm not sure. At any rate, if I showed in this menu, or in any menu rather, because it's also in the processing menu, right? Whether or not you actually have the resources required in those areas Then at least you wouldn't know that way. Yeah. I mean, I also want to get rid of this scroll thing here so that you can just use the mouse wheel. But there are some hurdles I have to get over in order to make that happen too. But yeah, I am aware of it. For now, at least you can see all the resources you have, I guess. Because of course it's also nice to be able to see how many resources you have without having to open a menu where those are used, right? So but let's see. Let's upgrade some of these things here, I think. Okay. It's just from the icons asset pack that I bought a long time ago. It's just a sword. Okay, so we probably want to improve the speed of that building, which is gonna take a lot of ingots. But we could improve the manual house crafting speed to speed this up greatly. Now we just need more wind distance if we want to improve this even more. Oh, this is a case where, you know, having the auto clicker work might be nice, but it doesn't at the moment. Then again, just like with the generating buildings, you can queue up these crafting processes and then it'll continue working as you do other stuff. So it's not like you do have to babysit them. They can just work autonomously. Okay. Oh yeah, we also want to complete this level so we can keep maintain our access to that crafting building. Oh, that's actually something I haven't considered. Oh, just realized something. If I were to abandon this level now, we would forfeit all the resources we invested into the crafting queue. Because it just deletes the building without returning the resource cost, I'm pretty sure. I at least don't remember ever implementing something like that, so... Then again, I also don't have an autosave implemented yet. Yeah, the Dungeon Defender's cursor looks a bit more refined though, or a little bit higher detail, I suppose. Well, it's also like the fidelity of the actual blade looks a bit higher detail. How much do we need? We need 90 lightning essence. And this is also, again, like, there's also a cost associated with the quests, right? So, again, even if I moved this over to the right, the inventory, it wouldn't change that. So I'll probably just try and figure out a way to push all the relevant resources up for whichever menu is currently active, and then either dimming everything else or yeah, I don't know, because I can also code it so that it moves the list up to the top so that you don't have to do it yourself. Yeah, I mean, it is. It is a hand-drawn sword. Yeah, we definitely have a good chunk of lightning essence. A level save slot 3 maybe? Oh no, we need more ingots. Okay. There we go. What do we need to complete this one? Sunbleak, that's these fish down here. Because I don't want to push the modifier down too far by just recklessly abandoning levels. Oh yeah, that's another thing that's changed since the early demo days, is that all the quests now scale with the modifier too. Back then, the quest costs would be a flat value and it wouldn't change no matter how high you got your modifier. But now it multiplies with it, so if I guess it would be like the base cost is, what, 500 bushy leaves, 50 roots, and 50 sunbleak. And then you just multiply that up by 10, that's how you get this value. And the benefit here is that if I make the level beatable with its own resources as a baseline, then even if they scale up with the modifier, you'll still be able to beat it. It's just gonna require more upgrades in order to be able to get to that state as quickly as at an earlier time in you playing the game, essentially. But then there's also, you know, an excess of resources that allows you to build up your stockpile to invest in those upgrades, and then later in future quests and buildings and what else there might be, right? That's kind of the whole game loop here. I mean, these rocks are starting to get like a good amount of stone in them now, over 100 in some of them. We haven't upgraded our mineral harvesting amount in quite a while. That's the other thing, right? If you keep abandoning or progressing through levels without actually harvesting enough resources and investing them into upgrades, you might also find yourself in a level that's going to ask you to, like, you know, collect fish all of a sudden, but then if you haven't upgraded your fishing capabilities, it's just going to be really tedious to do if you didn't prepare for it. At which point you might decide to deliberately abandon the level because it's a strategically better choice, you know, than to just brute force it. Or you might have a saved level where you can go and get those resources that you need to get the upgrades. And because the modifier stays the same for your saved level, chances are the you know, it wouldn't be too bad to get some of the resources there first, just to get a few extra upgrades. So for as simple as the game technically is, I guess you could argue that there is some complexity there that you can play around with. I just really hope that this foundation for the game is gonna open up for some really cool things down the line, because that's kind of what I've been aiming for. I mean, so far so good, right? And some of these, I don't know if you call them consequences, but some of these findings, essentially, because that's what they are, is not necessarily something I designed from the get-go. It's just a consequence of how I've done other parts of the game. And you know, whenever I see something that works in a specific way and I find a potential for it to become something even more interesting, that's where I start contemplating to actually, you know, extend the functionality in places. And so far, that's how the design of the game's also been shaping up. Okay, bump, bump, bump. Yeah, let's see. Bushy leaves, probably. Yeah. Actually, what do we need for the herbalist? Okay. Bump, 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 bump. It's the fern leaves, right? There it is. Yeah. These. So if we get 5,000 of those, we also unlock the, or we can unlock the herbalist. Definitely need to make some more herb related assets. Like right now I only have what, 4? And bushes and shrubs like that have a tendency to really like flesh out these levels more. But because I only have like a small variety of them, and it also needs to be balanced into the resource system, yeah, it's not the best at the moment. It could definitely be way better. That too. That too. Yeah, unlike, for instance, the trees, I have made basically different model variants for the trees. I think there's like 3 different model variants for every single tree. And then on top of every single model variant, there's also 3 different texture variants for every single tree. So in essence, there's actually 9 different versions of pine trees whenever I place them down. So they have small variations in like the shaping, how their trunk is sort of shaped into. And then there's sort of slight color intensity variation on the actual pine needles and such. Yeah. I should really just do the same with the bushes and the other herb related things. But I really just need to make more assets that are more fitting to the actual biomes, if you will, that they're situated in. Because these are sort of like tropical-esque plants, right? And sort of fit pretty well in like a swamp biome. But I mean, even though they fit into this cave biome, might still be more appropriate to have like maybe some mushroom-like herbs or something. I don't know exactly what I would make for it, but you know, or heck, even a type of herb or something that grows on the side of the walls, because you know these cave levels are going to have a lot of vertical walls that are not going to have their space utilized, so putting things onto the sides of them could maybe be interesting too. And like for these mushrooms, I mean, you can also see that they're different shapes, but it's the same texture essentially, which works out fine enough, I feel. But I could technically also add the, you know, color intensity, if you will, to them. And I actually have made some test textures which just have different patterns that could be used for a different type of mushroom as well. But yeah, there are just some things that are less fleshed out. The palm trees, I know they also have different model variants, as well as color. But yeah, I can see what you mean, like, this is very samey. Yeah, I am. The way that it works is that every single resource basically has like a switch setting that Wise reads, and then that is used to determine what sound is played. So since the mushrooms produce logs, they are technically trees in this case. They also fill the space of trees in these levels, so yeah, that's why they use the same axe chopping sound. Yeah, these oak trees are also not really that fleshed out. They also need to be changed. Very crunchy mushrooms, yeah. But like these oak trees do have the color variation and model variations that as well that I mentioned, but I just don't like the way that I've done the leaves on this. This is really like, shit, I need an oak tree. Fucking Photoshop or whatever, get me a leaf pattern and then just make, yeah, it's not so great. Do we still have the, yeah, like I definitely like what I managed to do with these mangrove trees much more, but these are also newer models that I made way later, so this is more like what I would want to go for, I think. And again, they also have 3 different models and 3 different textures, so it seems to be like a pretty good way of getting variety in there without ruining consistency and all that. And also without it taking a crap ton of effort to do, so. The rocks are a little bit less samey, but that's because they use some shader magic in order to make that happen. That's also why when they sink into the ground, you can sort of see the texture move a little bit. So the texture is going to be dependent on where in the game world they're located, because it just gets projected onto them. So you can essentially have the same rock next to each other, but they look different. Yeah, tips and tricks. How to make a game. Okay, I totally forgot that we were doing this thing. Trying to get those bushy leaves. Oh, right. No. We were trying to get the... Or that was the original plan, but then I've reevaluated and said like, oh yeah, we can get the upgrade, can't we? This lost track. No biggie. And we should have the coins. Yeah, we have enough coins to buy it. There we go. Cool. And that means that we can put that in there. Can we afford... Yeah, we can afford some of the upgrades. Because we've got lightning essence now. Oh, and then if we want to upgrade the amount, we need to gather fern leaf herbs. And we still need to get this these essences for this quest, by the way. Wind essence is gonna be well, all the essences are a bit tricky because there's only one level to find either of them. One of them is the snow level. We do have access to it, but we need to harvest this stuff. Actually, okay, we have upgraded the harvesting rate of this. Cool. Okay, definitely need to upgrade the amount from that for that herbalist. Otherwise, it's not gonna really be doing as much good. I know. I think it's because there's quite a lot of quartz in these. And it currently harvests how much at a time? 7 at a time because this is level 6. So every time you upgrade the amount that it harvests, it also decreases this, or yeah, I guess it decreases the speed, but it increases the amount of time it takes between it harvesting stuff, and it also reduces the range of it. Sort of like a side effect. And either I'm just really unlucky or there's something that isn't working as it should. Because it has not produced any of it. But there's like over 150 something on these. Yeah, that it makes sense why it does that. It's because the it doesn't show milliseconds, and it reduces the speed by 0.1 second. So actually I have managed to improve the timer since the alpha version, because in the alpha version I was using was it seal or what was I using again? I was using the wrong mathematical function to do it, so it would actually, yeah, I was using round to nearest int or something, so it would actually, like, you know, stay at 0 for like half a second before it would actually tick. Rookie mistake, yeah. Yeah, there might be some kind of bug where it's not generating the secondary resources for some reason. It seems like that might be the case. But that's not so good. Well, it's an experimental branch build. That's what I call it. That just means that we've run out of ports and no wind essence. God damn it. I wonder if that's like due to recent changes I've made that it's not working as intended. I think it might be because I'm... Wait, no, that generated secondary resources. Ah. Huh. Maybe I just was that unlucky because the drop rate of essence is quite low. Yeah, I do, but that's because I also manually harvested some quartz. So, hey, Cellfire, good to see you here. Welcome to. Yeah. So not sure if that was just a waste, but it's definitely something. So we're playing the experimental branch version of the early access build, because the game is released into early access today. You can go and buy it right now. And if I were a marketing person, I would say it's also 20% off, by the way. Yes, I can. I just don't have any control over it. It's all. And in order to do that, I would need to override save slot 1 because it's actually saved into that slot. Nice indeed. And that's why I wanted to get these bushy leaves and the herbalist upgraded, because I didn't want to reduce our modifier either, so... Thank you. I hope it goes well, at least. Can't really do much else than put in the effort, am I right? So yeah, today I'm just playing the game a bit so that people have a chance to see what it's about, essentially in action, and then also rambling on about things that I haven't done and could do. You know, nothing out of the ordinary. Nothing out of the ordinary there. This level is really good because there's a lot of, like, to get a lot of quick treasure rewards in it. Since there's just freestanding chests and some easily accessible spots. That's another thing, like, once you know where the treasure chests are, you can quickly go in, get the chests, and then decide to just abandon the level without completing it, right? Yeah, I don't get to be surprised by the secrets, that's true. Okay, so we've got our snow level again. That's called grinding heads. Well, you're not wrong. But it's also called resource and level management. If you really can't be bothered with the grinding, you can use the auto clicker, right? But then you're also cutting down your play hours, so... Like, I've played this for almost 3 hours now, so there's that, I guess. And I haven't quite unlocked all the auto harvesters, though the monster hunter needs to be cheaper at the moment. Heresy. Yeah. I mean, see, that's the thing about traditional idle games, right? You play them with the intent of not having to play them. Does that make any sense? Because typical idle game design logic is that you improve your manual clicking only to a certain point where your auto-clicking capabilities trump it to the point where you don't have to play the game anymore. Have to abide to the idle god. I say nay. Nay, I say to you. But yeah, that's kind of what I didn't want to do with this game. I didn't want it to be a case of, oh, you know, you were just using the manual harvesting until you eventually unlock the ability to build buildings that produce infinite resources ex nihilo, and then, you know, 60-70% of the game's content becomes obsolete. Sounds like Clicker Heroes 1. Need to work out best idle setup too, or you may take 10 times longer to idle to a goal. I don't know. All the idle games I ever play is literally just auto-click or just buy everything until you can't afford anything. And every single idle game is literally just invest in the most expensive option as soon as you can. And not investing, like, wait, and you actively, in most idle games, get punished for not being patiently waiting until you can get that next tier. Like, that's one of the aspects I don't like about most idle games. Yeah, there's the keyword though, they tried. But how well did they succeed? I mean, they succeeded in some sense, but when it comes down to it, they still rely on the old mechanics of, oh, you need to like ascend in order to progress at a certain point and start over and all that stuff, because the exponential curve just becomes so steep that there's no other choice. Granted, some idle games use that approach in order as like a vehicle for introducing new game mechanics, so that every time you do start over, it's not just the same game up until a certain point where you can break that threshold, but rather it's the same game but with more branching content. What's that game actually called again? It's an idle game that what's it called? Damn, I can't even remember. Because it doesn't have idle in its name. And it's got like a really weird title too, if I remember correctly. I just remembered it. Cell to Singularity is the most recent idle game that I played. Where it's like, oh, you get up to a certain threshold where you like, it's not super great because you get to a certain threshold where the only thing you can do is wait until you get the amount of resources to get to the next threshold so that you can start over and then you breeze through it again. I would give it a go. I think you might enjoy it. I at least did. Until, you know, it just became so ridiculously slow to progress. Because of the later, like, it's not even essential levels. It's more like, the way that game is structured is it's multiple games in one. So you progress in one game where, like the main game, if you will, where the progression curve is rather quick. And then eventually you unlock another game mode area that progresses in a completely different way, but also at a different pace, so that you can play the main part of the game, I guess you would call it, which runs at that normal pace, but then occasionally check out and manage the other secondary one. And then eventually you unlock a third one, which is the same thing, different sort of primary mechanics, but then even slower progression because the numbers need to be much, much higher before you can reach each threshold. It's kind of hard to explain. You'd have to try it. Because as a man system well succeeded, it's a hard balance because there's also the skill tree which changes aspects of the game. Yeah, I don't really feel that like it wasn't, at least Clicker Heroes 2 wasn't memorable enough for me to actually recall anything that seemed super different. It might have been there, but yeah, I just don't remember it. Yes, how much win distance have we gotten? Okay, we definitely have enough to beat the game. Mindustry, but okay. Isn't Mindustry like not an idle game though? Or do you just mean like, oh, you looked at Mindustry, it looked interesting because Factorio or something, and then you got disappointed? Because expectations. Oh, right. I mean, let me just make sure that it's the game that I think about. Yeah. Okay, yeah, okay, I see. So the thing about that though is it's also a, let's call it a way to make the levels that you've beaten matter in the larger scope of things. I would assume was the intent with it, right? Because it is a factory-driven game, and on one end you have, well, say Factorio, where the whole point is to make a factory that's super efficient, right? And the longer term goals being to improve upon your designs. But then if Mindustry was all about, what do you call it, contemporary levels where your designs ultimately don't matter beyond a certain point, you know what I mean? Because you've beaten them and you would just move on, then that would also be less of a motivating factor to actually improve your design, am I right? RTS version of Factorio. I mean, RTS version of Factorio. There's not really any games that are like that, is there? Yeah, and that's where you could maybe make the counter argument that if it was balanced appropriately so that you don't feel like the game is effectively time gating you, then you could get around it by just saying, oh, okay, they just require you to get way too much for my taste or something. So if the numbers were lower, you know, you'd reach that threshold sooner, and it would mean for more like smooth progression. But I mean, RTS Factorio is just Factorio with mods, so like the AAI mod, for instance, or mods would probably be part of that. The only other games that really come close to being an RTS, I guess, but are more tower defense than RTS would be something like the Rift Breaker or what is it called? Dream Engines? Hold on. Yeah, Dream Engines Nomad Cities. I need to get back to playing that game when some time as well. Dream Engines is, I might as well just share it just because Dream Engines is a bit of a, like, you land down in an area with your main, like, base or whatever that also acts as both a city builder thing as well as a factory builder. And then you can extend beyond that into the rest of the level with certain areas of the level containing uncommon or rare resources that you need to progress. And then it's a bit like the Billions, where you get raided by waves of enemies that progressively get harder and harder. And eventually you'll have to, you know, abandon the level with whatever you can carry and progress to the next one simply because the waves get too strong for you to deal with. You might be right on that. Fish jump out of water. That would be too much effort. The way that these are made right now is that I literally take like a transparent version of the fish icons that I have in my assets, and then in Krita I basically make a mask out of them to make this circular texture, and then with some shader magic I make it look wobbly and follow the contour of the waves. Don't know if I have a good example of that at the current point in time. I might, yeah, here actually. Yeah, okay, so there's some, are they doing what they should? Wait a minute. I don't know if they're doing what they should. No, they're not doing what they should. They should follow the contour of the waves, but they don't. Okay, I'll have to look at that. It was working at some point. For some reason it's not at the moment. Huh. Basically, when they spawn in, they check the water surface beneath, take the shader values for these waves, and that's how they are supposed to follow the contour, but for some reason they don't quite do that right now. Yeah, that's a valid point. That's because of Bloom, I think. I'm not sure. We can just try it out. Because this is a very bright level, generally speaking. Also, there is motion blur in the game, but it's disabled by default because I know a lot of people don't like motion blur. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's probably just because it's a bright surface. Bloom is the devil's work? Motion blur is the devil's work. I mean, it's only the devil's work if you, you know, make it really intense. Also, I've done something that you don't usually see in games. I've exposed all the settings apart from just the bloom intensity, so you can like make it look really terrible if you want. But that's what the reset to default is for. But it could also just be the contrast on your local monitor, because on my end it doesn't seem that bad. The places where it's the worst is the lava, though. But that's also like, I'm not entirely sure on how I want to deal with this. One thing I've contemplated is increasing the brightness of the acid, like the fish themselves, and then adding a an outline to them. Because the issue with lava is that it has these transitioning effects between molten lava, I guess, and the stuff that hardens into like a brimstone rock kind of thing. So it's like you can't just make it either bright or dark because it needs to do both at the same time. Maybe. Maybe. Pop. Okay, so we need lightning essence and fire essence in order to actually beat the main game quest. Why don't we go ahead and do that? And I'm just gonna use the alt clicker just so that we can get to that a little bit sooner. Hopefully. Might still need to revisit this level. That's like the only... That's another, I guess, annoying thing right now, is that this level is required to make copper ingots, but you also need the lightning essence, and you can only get it in this level, which requires you to reset it so that you can revisit it. Yeah, that's a bit shitty. Well, experimental here though. I probably should just make more cave levels. Art rocks. Oh, just because of the dust plumes. That's just a generic dust plume effect. Free replayability. Yeah, I mean, that is kind of how the game is structured at the moment, right? That's also why I want to focus on the infinite mode first. Fuck, was it level 1 or 2? I can't remember. It's probably level 2, wasn't it? Nope, it wasn't even that. It was level 3. Damn it. We don't really need more wind essence, so let's just abandon this. No, wait, I need to complete it. Damn. Well, not necessarily this one, but I need to complete a level at least to replace level 3. Yeah, the memory. That's another thing, like there's not really any good way that I can visualize the levels with the icons. I could make like every level have a custom sort of texture used as a reminder or thumbnail or something, just to help you remember what your save slots are saved to, I guess. And then just put that in as a background image or something, and then reduce the number to be smaller and in the bottom. That could maybe do the trick. That's like a quality of life thing, isn't it? And I need to be careful not to land into that pitfall of just implementing only quality of life stuff, because... yeah. There needs to also be a game to play, right? But you're right, it is a bit of a memory game, since you also have to remember how many of the different resources you have. More content, yeah. I mean, I kind of expect that, right? But then again, like, I am only a single person. There's only so many things I could do at the same time. But, you know, preferably I would spend the majority of the time actually working on the game. And on top of that, preferably even more so content that actually makes it more fun. That's a really vague statement though. I think it doesn't matter what platform we're talking about there. Yeah, well, we do have a high modifier, so let's actually just abandon this level. Great. That's really bad luck. But then again, like, once you've built up all your save slots, there's only 3 levels that can be in rotation or something. So, the likelihood of you getting the same level is pretty high still. Yeah, that's enough lightning essence. Now we just need the fire essence. And for some reason, I don't know if it's just my luck or whatever. But getting the lava level with fire essence is apparently just I just have a really hard time getting to it for some reason. Let me guess, we need like a 6,000 bushy leaves now. Yep. Yeah, because I don't really want to reduce our multiplier too much. Because if I do that, then even if we get to the lava level, there'll not be that much fire essence present, so... I'm balancing the multiplier so it doesn't get too low, but also trying to cycle through levels until we get one that we want. Or rather, not one we want, but one we need in order to progress. And basically beat the current version of the game, I suppose. And right now I'm just getting a lot of bushy leaves because if this level is gonna stay in the rotation, then I want to be able to just beat it over and over, right? That sounds really violent. I'm just using the auto clickers so that we get this through this a bit faster, but ideally I would also upgrade my fishing speed because, well, I haven't been. High level die. I mean, it's definitely a game that for people that want a casual, relaxing experience, but also just like to see the world burn. In a certain sense. Well, I'll try and see if we can't get to it within the next 30 minutes, preferably. Preferably even a little bit faster than that, but let's see. Hey, we got the level we need. No rush. Well, I actually also need to finish off the stream today, but I do want to just, like, at least get to that point. Since we've gotten this far anyway. But yeah, it's definitely way more, like, it takes a lot more effort now to complete the storyline level as a result of how it's structured. Especially because the quest requirements also require, or also scale with the difficulty or the multiplier. So, that should be it. Congratulations, you have reached the end of the story for now. So yeah. It's just a little thank you message, really. And there's no storyline level after this, but what would happen is that... So the way that the storylines would be implemented in full and is actually already working, is that it's dependent on how high your multiplier has gotten. So for the current storyline level to trigger, you need your multiplier to become free. And if your multiplier is free, when it loads the next level, it will load this one specifically. What that means is that the conditions for getting from one storyline mission to the next is to, first of all, having beaten the, well, prerequisite storyline mission, of course, but then also get your modifier up to a certain level too, and then keep it there, most importantly. So that means if I say the next modifier requirement is like level 10, or modifier of 10, and you have been up to 12, but then downscaled it to like 8, you'll have to regain it up to 10 after beating the storyline level. It doesn't... I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure I've made it so it doesn't remember it, at least. So that's how the storyline progression would be. And I didn't talk about it a little bit earlier today, but right now the modifier is just independent of the type of tier the level is. But I've been contemplating combining the modifier with the tier so that as you progress through the game, you first start in tier 1, build up your modifiers for the tier 1 levels, and then eventually when you reach a certain threshold, either by completing certain like the storyline missions to a certain point or buying an upgrade or something, just not sure how, then when you complete a level, you'll be able to choose, oh, do you want the next one to be a tier 1 or tier 2 level? And if it's tier 2, you start the modifier over at modifier 1 so that they're separate. But yeah. Calling Cellfire out like that. You're right though, he did say in 6. But yeah, that's like some of the stuff that I have to figure out moving forward. And the reason why I want to do it like that is because the tier upgrades here will have a huge effect on how long it's going to take you to harvest resources, right? So say you have a modifier 13 and you say the next level after completing this one, you want it to be tier 2, and it would just build on that modifier. Well, now you're in a tier 2 level maybe for the first time with a modifier of 14, and all the resources would just take forever to harvest. True, you would get a lot of resources in return, but if the secondary resources are needed to upgrade your tier 2 harvesting, that would just be really tedious and annoying. Oh, okay. So yeah, it's like the question of, you don't really want to be stuck in a situation where you have to press a rock 210 times just to harvest it, that one rock, you know? Because there's no way that you can prepare for tier 2 while still in tier 1, unless I make tier 2 upgrades initially just requiring tier 1 resources. Because again, you know, with that, if I implement all that, you would still be able to abandon, and then once you've abandoned a level, you get to choose which tier the next one should be too. So you don't end up in a situation where you can feel like you're stuck and being forced to do things the hard way simply because you might have made a choice based off of lack of knowledge or whatever it be, right? Because that's not how I want my game to function. I don't want that to be the game feel. Again, you know, it's supposed to be this relaxing sort of experience where you can just explore the levels at your own pace and figure out the game mechanics without too much hand-holding. I mean, this is as much of a tutorial you literally get. The rest of the game you have to figure out yourself. So, yeah. Look around for question signs and then controls. Because you don't really need much more for this game. like all the tactics and strategies on how to utilize the save system. That's part of discovering what the game is about, right? My job is just to make it so that that doesn't become super annoying to deal with like it is right now. It's a bit too annoying for my own tastes. Like the whole, oh, you need, you know, in order to make this market, you first need planks, but in order to do that, you need to get to this other level, and then there you need oak wood, which, wait, you actually get from this level. But yeah, that's essentially MonsterStone in a nutshell. That is the state of the game, and the only thing from here on out is to expand it and gradually implement the things that I have in mind for it. Not exactly sure what the next... Well, I mean, I know what the next steps are. It's polishing or fixing some of the issues that are of this menu, because I've noticed a couple things today. Like sometimes it just keeps improving this or increasing the cost, but not the level and such. And I have a suspicion it's due to some recent changes I made, so I'll have to look into that. But, oh yeah, and an autosave feature. That might be nice. Actually, there's one thing I can show before I leave you today, and that's the profiles menu. Before you couldn't have multiple saves, but if you make a new profile now, and say I select that one, if I just return, okay, we're still in this game, but if I save this one and load, then it's gonna load the save onto that profile, and then if I use the other one, and it's gonna load the save for that profile. So you can have more than one save, but you do need to make separate profiles for it. Otherwise you just keep overwriting the same save. Yeah, that is all I have for you today. I hope this game manages to do well and some people find fun in it and so forth. I definitely want to try and make it, you know, the game that I envisioned it to be. So yeah, it's on Steam, early access, 20% off for like, I think it's a week or something. It's the launch sale thing. So if you want to get it at a discount now, would definitely be the time. Because I don't want to have people feel cheated out by, you know, investing into this early on. So yeah, if you liked what you saw, consider giving the game a go, and really looking forward to like feedback in terms of where the game's currently headed and what I have planned, because I really don't know everything. Like, no surprise there. So even though I have an idea of what I should focus on and where the game should go in terms of the grander scope of things, I also want to listen to the community and what others have to say. But yeah, that's it for today. Thanks everyone who's dropped by and said nice words about the game and so forth. And I hope to talk to you all soon. I don't know how consistent I will be streaming forward as well. I do want to continue doing the development streams that I've been doing in the past. But given the game just got released, there's probably going to be a lot of community management stuff. Like, I have a Discord set up for Bended Rules, the company that I made to back up this game and release and all that. But I need to set up and get everything working properly, like so that I can post news about the development of the game, for instance, in one place, and then it gets out to you and all that stuff. So I don't know if how much room there will be to actually stream game development, because this stuff isn't exactly something that's, you know, really that interesting to see me work on, if you will. But yeah, I should probably stop rambling and just let you all go and say thanks for today, and see you all on the next one. Have a good day, and bye for now.